You also mentioned your Christian faith, and I'm wondering how that informs this lens through which you're seeing all this.
So for me, and this is going to get a little bit more Christian than therapy, I feel like God has given me the talents and abilities that I have, and that a requirement for me as a Christian is to use them to the best of my ability. And so for me, being as competent a therapist as I can be is the way that I serve God with the life that He has blessed me with. I also think or believe that it's something that I actively try to do with everybody that I interact with, but particularly with clients, is to kind of view them with all the love and grace and mercy, but also like very realistic kind of accept you for who you are, like to love you at the way Jesus would love you. But that also doesn't necessarily mean that you don't change to be more, hopefully, a product. I don't know. Hang on. This was a
I,
hard one.
I'm Yeah, I'm a Christian also, and I feel like Christianity is a ridiculously hard religion to follow. Like the standard set by Jesus is he encounters people and he says, I love you, I accept you, you're mine, you're my child, and also turn your life around, go in a different direction, go and sin no more. And to be able to have like both of those elements is really tough to hold both of that. And I think as a therapist, there's some value to that, to saying like, I see you, I hear you, I accept you, and also like your drug addiction's killing you. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Ryan. What a beautiful way to put exactly what I wanted to say into words. I appreciate that. Yes, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. I feel like there's an extra motivation of faith, when you apply that. I know you don't necessarily like want to apply like every word, but I think the general idea of you're serving a higher purpose. Like when Jesus says like, whatever you done to the least of these, you done it to me. Like if you have someone coming into your office and they're struggling and they're suffering, like treat that person like you would Jesus. I feel like that's an added motivation. Yeah. How do you see religion, specifically Christianity, being addressed or embraced in the field? Because one thing I see is it's generally not like I don't see people openly hostile to it, but it's kind of just generally assumed a lot of times that Christianity is something backwards, that the ideal thing would be to move your client beyond that, to kind of evolve beyond it. I'm wondering if you see any of that.
Yes, and I treat religious trauma, or how do you like that with your sky father? I'm so sick of hearing these things. It's just rude. It's very disrespectful rhetoric. You don't want for Christians to talk about the things that you believe in that regard. So why are you talking about anything related to Christianity like that? This is a country founded on Christian beliefs. Our Constitution is founded on Christian beliefs. Our pledges, everything is founded within Christianity. You cannot have liberty without Christian morals. So Christianity within our field, I've been referencing Christian beliefs since day one. And if my client professes to have an issue with God, I say, well, I hear what you're saying. These are still really great things to practice. Saying God bothers you, just take God's name out of it and still practice it. Prayer is one of the best ways to develop internal dialogue. What are you doing? You're saying, this is my problem. I need help. And here's something I'm grateful for. So that's how I teach prayer. And if they don't like for me to call it prayer, then we just call it internal dialogue. But every single thing within Christianity, I mean, Proverbs is my favorite book in the Bible, and it's all about psychology, basic things related to psychology. So if somebody has a problem with the word God, they're a different religion, that's perfectly fine. They can take the word God out or anything related to a word of Christianity, but everything in the Bible is still relevant to what we're doing. And we're actually doing it. I think people just don't realize it. So to sit there and bash Christianity or call us Christian nationalists or whatever ugly rhetoric they have, I think that they are projecting onto others the behaviors that they're actually engaging in.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I love so much of that. I read Proverbs probably a month ago, and it was amazing just how much wisdom for daily life there is. I mean, even just like how to manage your money, just really like concrete, wisdom advice for just living is really neat. So I think that's amazing that you apply that to therapy.
Yes.
You're a practicing Christian. You went to a Christian university. I don't see necessarily like an open, overt demonization of Christianity, but I feel like there's somewhat of a mentality in the field where it's like this is kind of a backwards belief system, and ideally the client would outgrow that and evolve beyond it. Do you see any of that?
Not a tremendous amount, not in my area, because, where I live, because it is so very kind of deep Bible Belt.
Mm.
I think, I'd say a bigger concern that I have is people that I never would have expected to become um, wrapped up in like intersectional thinking,
Mm.
um, are in many cases the exact ones that ended up being wrapped up in that. And I see it making its way into church,
Mm.
even here. Here it's like it's individuals, have kind of gotten wrapped up in it and bought into it. And an interesting thing I've noticed about that is it is people who were very, very conservative, and you might even say legalistic in the way they approached faith. Like they want rigidity and rules and firmness to things. And what I've seen happen in the church throughout my life is kind of more and more relaxation and more of rules and more welcome and more true acceptance of people. And that's uncomfortable if you're somebody who wants like things to be segmented and sectioned off and rigid. And that's how I've come to understand that. It's like the kids that I grew up with, I say kids, like the people that I grew up with who are my age, the ones who've gone hardest that direction seem to be the ones who were kind of the most churchy, at least in some cases when we were growing up.
That's really interesting. I think part of that is the desire to adhere to some rules, which, you have clearly laid out rules. Another part, I'm wondering if you notice, we're talking about two populations here that I think might be uniquely vulnerable to being hijacked by empathy, and that's therapists and Christians, right? Therapy, like your primary objective, the primary trait that you have to have is empathy. And with Christianity, Christ tells us to basically love aggressively, like fiercely love our neighbor. And it's so easy to sneak in there. It's like, well, if you really want to fight racism, then you'll fight it with more racism. If you really want to fight misogyny, then you'll be devoted to hating men. If you really want to help out gender confused kids, then you'll support their chemical and surgical castration. And it's like this empathy is just warped into this very perverse place. I'm wondering if you kind of see that in those two populations.
Say more those two populations, what do you mean by that?
So
Oh, church
Christians
and
and therapists.
Gotcha. Definitely, yes. I mean, and kind of in the general public view of that for sure. And I think it is that pull to be, accommodating. We got to be as accommodating and accepting of the person as possible. And probably a little bit less in church where I am. Although if you look at, it's interesting, if you look at the churches in the town where I live, the most progressive ones, like the ones that had events for Black Lives Matter during 2020, are the ones where the theology professors attend. And to me that was not surprising because most of them are like Yale educated, or Duke Divinity educated, and so they're coming from these ivory towers of theological academia, which are also far left institutions. So I see it making its way in there, and definitely in therapy.
If you're a Christian who values life, how are you going to be able to practice as a therapist when you have the client who is trying to decide what to do with the life growing in them?
Hmm.
So,
What
like
was
you,
the
like,
answer you got?
well, the answer that you get is, you're not supposed to push your values on your clients, which, I mean, I do not proselytize in my practice. I am not here to convince other people to accept my religious or political or even personal convictions that I have in my life. I'm not here to convert people into little Megans. That's not the goal
Hmm.
of therapy. But the answer was very much of like, okay, if if you're a Christian who values life, you have to pipe down and shut that up, and you're not allowed to express that in therapy. But if you are someone who's on the more liberal side of things, it's perfectly fine for you to advocate and help your client obtain a right
don't bring politics into therapy unless it's the right politics.
Yeah, and it was like that. It's like, okay, so we're not supposed to, so because like there's two sets of beliefs, right? There's a pro-life set of belief and there's a pro-choice set of belief. And it's like, okay, you're not allowed to push your beliefs onto clients, but it's like you're really only saying that to people in the room who might be pro-life. You're not really saying that to people in the room who might be pro-choice.
Yeah. It's almost like they don't identify, like pro-life would be seen as politics and pro-choice is not politics. It's just kind of like the obviously correct answer. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, because that's like exactly how it was at the time, and probably still is even worse. And really, to me, like both of those are religious and political. You can't separate the religious and the political from either one of those belief systems.
Yeah.
So
I'm wondering,
there's this like therapeutic neutrality that only certain therapists are supposed to have.
do you see like in professional organizations or in like therapy networking groups or social media groups, like discrimination against Christians?
Well, when I was allowed to be in the groups, yes. And what's really funny is that I never said anything. I never posted. I never commented on anything. I just was a fly on the wall because I wanted to understand really where is our field going right now. And it was so ugly. So I'm not upset that I'm kicked out, because it was very, very disheartening to read the things that they're saying. But oh yes, they bash Christians, and there are some Christians that I think were starting to speak up. But by and large, people in the therapeutic or in the mental health world bash Christianity.